Hi, my name's Joe Richards. I'm the Executive Director at Pearce Williams Summer Camp and Retreat Facility in Fingal, Ontario, and part of the United Church of Canada Camping Network.
And I'm Heather Withrow. I'm the president of Jumonville Camp and Retreat Center in Hopwood, Pennsylvania, part of the United Methodist Camping family.
Heather, it's great to be back. Season 2, baby! Yeah.
Great to see you,
awesome.
Joe.
It's
Thanks
good
for
to see
agreeing
you.
to take this crazy ride again with me.
Well, we'll see if we can squeeze out a second season. I think that one of the things you and I have been talking about is this idea that why don't we use the next few episodes, probably 5 to 7 of them, and talk about year-end fundraising and actually walk people through it.
Is this where we sing It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year?
it can be the most wonderful time of the year if you plan ahead, and that's why we want to start now. So we're hoping this episode you're listening to was released on around the 18th of October, which is Monday. And then our plan would be to try and pop out 4 episodes between now and American Thanksgiving. And the reason that is because if you're planning a year-end fundraising campaign, American Thanksgiving is a great target to release that campaign and give you enough time to do letters and emails and reminders and all of those great things. Doesn't that sound like a plan, Heather?
It does. It can be the best time of year for fundraisers. It can also be the most stressful. So we want to do what we can to help you navigate that. Learn from the stupid stuff that we've done over the years and get yourself ready for a successful year-end campaign.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things that I struggle with every year is planning far enough out. I often get to within a week or two of American Thanksgiving, and I'm not ready at all, which makes it more difficult. And that's where making this planning really will be beneficial in the sense of what are some things we need to plan? We need to make sure. So lists is one thing we need to talk about for sure, right? Who are you sending this stuff to? Email versus letter mail. People might not know that letter mail is much better at getting you donations, especially depending on the cohort that you've got. What story you're going to tell, right? Like what are we fundraising for? What have you done in the past, Heather, for year-end campaigns as far as a story and fund?
Generally, we pick a couple stories from camp or from a retreat guest that had a particularly spiritual experience. This time of year is when we get thank you letters, sometimes from parents who received camp scholarship for their kids. And that's something that we will sometimes include with the permission of the family. And when we get to talking about the actual mailing itself, something called a buck slip, which is just a piece of paper. It's about the size of an American dollar bill, which I guess is why it's called a buck slip. Feel free to submit your stories in the comments of why you think it should be called a buck slip. But it's something extra that falls out of the envelope that people can look at and say, here's a picture. Here it is a facsimile of the person's writing saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. My kid got to go to camp because of your camp scholarship, and it changed his or her life. That can be.
Oh, see, I thought you were talking about like a buck slip would be like the actual donor form that
No.
they fill out and send back in. So we can certainly. I'm intrigued by the idea of buck slip. So we're going to talk about story. We're going to talk about buck slip. We need to talk about the donation receipt, right? Slip.
Yeah. The return, the remittance itself is important. And what you ask on that can be really, really beneficial going forward to other types of fundraising. For example, one thing we always ask is, have you included Jumonville in your estate plans, or are you interested in talking to somebody about that?
Yeah. It's also, I figured out that you can use your remittance form to direct them to an online form, but you can also, depending on your software and your ability, you can make that a very specific online form that you can justify that they only got to it because they got the mailing.
Right.
I didn't realize that the program that I use to do fundraising tracking, Bloomerang, I can do as many donation slips, remittance forms as I want. And right, if I only give them out on certain letters, then I know, oh, that's interesting. So I could send out letter 1 versus letter 2. Oh, yeah. If I was into data, I could track all of that, right?
For those of you listening, if you were watching, you could see Joel's wheels turning right behind his eyes. His little brain hamster is running for its life right now.
Oh, yes. It's all good. Um, Lists is going to be the most, right? Like, who are you sending it to? So I think that we need to talk to them about this idea of, if you have nobody at this moment in time, if you have no list, how do you start this process? And the list is a whole episode by itself, right? How you're
It
putting
really
things.
is. And the care and feeding of your list. It is a living, breathing thing. You can't just create the list once. You have to know your list inside and out, keep it pruned, keep it relevant, pay attention when someone passes that you're not sending mail to somebody who's no longer able to receive it. Keep your addresses up to date. Always be asking for updated information from your donors.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're going to talk about lists, the story. I suppose we need to go through the cycle, right? Of thanks, ask, thank, report, repeat. Because it's going to be a challenge if you've just asked in September for something, but you haven't sent out any thanks for those things. You need to send those out before you're going to start this campaign, so you don't confuse them or don't make them feel alienated.
Mm-hmm.
Ask, thank, report, repeat. We also want to talk about the actual schedule. I'm not sure, right? Like, if we start, why American Thanksgiving? I choose that as a date simply because I listened to a fundraiser talk about it once upon a time, and I was like, oh, well, this makes perfect sense. I can track, right? I can track the day. Okay, one goes out here. My second letter goes out here. All of my emails on my social media, and I can track it as I go towards the end of the year. So, schedule. What else have we missed?
We haven't talked about the tax implications of why year end is so important for your fundraising calendar. In the United States, it boils down to two things. One is taxes, getting your donations in before December 31st. And the other one is for your older donors who are over, I believe it's 70 and a half, who have a personal retirement account. There's something called a required minimum distribution. And that can be something that's really beneficial for your camp, that donors over a certain age are required to take a certain amount out of their retirement funds each year. And that's something that we can talk about in a later episode. But if you haven't informed your donors about that and about how they can send that to your camp, you want to do that.
Yeah, and Canada has similar tax implications. So if you donate only $200, you get 15% of that credited towards your income tax. If you donate above $200, it moves up to almost 30% of a credit on your income tax.
And there are special rules in the United States for this year that up to $300 per individual or $600 per couple can be given for full credit. Meaning if you give 300, you get to deduct all of it just for this year as the economy is recovering from the pandemic. So that's something very important that you want to share with your donors. Part of your job as a fundraiser is to educate your donors on ways they can give that benefit them and benefit you. And so knowing these things, having an accountant on your board, on your team, on your cheerleading squad who can help you know about these things. No one expects you to know the United States tax code. I just proved that I didn't with some of the ways I stammered through that last sentence. but having somebody in your corner who does and can tell you about these things, so that when you're sending out your letter, you can say, oh, by the way, did you know, special for this year, up to $600 from your, if you're writing to a couple, can be deducted dollar for dollar. And that's unusual for us. So that's a very important piece of information that you want to send out. And that's something we can put that piece of tax code into the show notes for this show.
And that's huge. We do not have that same, there's nothing I've heard of following the nonprofit information in Canada of that same break. The thing that people and organizations would really need to be careful about is how do you share that information yet still make the letter emotional, right? Still draw them in to give, because certain board members would love you to put things in a fundraising letter that don't apply or that lose the effectiveness of the letter over time. And talking about tax code seems to be, like, in my mind, it would be the easiest way just to lose to lose some donors. That would be awesome.
Sure. And it's not something that you wouldn't necessarily want to include in that letter,
Yeah.
but you could include it in a separate email. You could include it in a social media blast. You could include it on your donor information page on your website. But yeah, that's an excellent point, Joe. You don't want to bore them to death with tax code when you're trying to play to their heartstrings.
Well, and this goes back to that basics of writing at a lower grade level, because people are scanning these letters, right? So if we aim to be between the grade level of 4 and 8, most people can scan those. And I don't know that I could explain tax code to a 4-year-old, but I could, right? Like, I love the idea, because if there was $600 in free, like, total just credit, so if I gave 600, I get 600, I would do that in a heartbeat, because it just saves you money on your income tax, right? Like, it's beneficial to the organization, and it's beneficial to you as an individual. So
Right. It can be included in the letter, and we can talk about where. On the reverse side of the buck slip, on the reverse side of the letter itself. You don't want to waste your PS, because that's
huge.
Something that we know everybody reads. However, a PPS or a, hey, check out the back for some interesting, tax implications. You have some donors that are going to want to know that would actually like to read the tax code. They're probably not the ones you want to take out to coffee on a regular basis, but
and I suppose you could hide it not hide it, you could put it more as a question and direct them to an online explanation, right? To say, did you know that this year you can give $300 or 600 as a couple, and you get that as a credit? Find out more and then just have a small webpage dedicated to it on your website, right?
Right, which I think would be great. But yeah, you definitely don't want it to be the main point or even a sub point of your letter. You don't want to, that's precious space that you don't want to waste, but you do want to inform your donors.
It might be something that you could put actually right on the donation card, right? Like, but anyway, there's numerous ways to do that. So we're going to talk about lists. We're going to talk about the story, the cycle, the buck slip, the donation slip, the schedule, a bit more about tax implications. And I suppose timing wise is, in my mind, do you think timing is where you begin this journey, right? Like showcasing what, if we work backwards from December 31st to figure out why we do things when we do them.
Yeah, I think timing is really important. And also remember that all of these ideas are scalable. If you're a one person shop and you're thinking, well, that's great, Heather and Joe, but I do not have any help in the office. I don't have the personal bandwidth to do all of these steps. help me scale it. And Joe, I think you would say the same thing I would say, but I'm going to give you a chance here in a minute, believe it or not. Yeah. If you can only do one thing, for heaven's sake, do the letter.
Yeah. 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 Not even like just email is not nearly as valuable as a physical letter.
Right.
Right. And I've done this. I've copped out and never sent and not sent the letter because I've been too either lazy or just not had the bandwidth. Not nearly the same response as sending out paper letters. I would track if you have a donor database, you can probably it should be able to tell you who has an email and who doesn't. And one of the things in Canada at least that people are thinking about is the price of postage. So it's almost $1 per letter to send out.
Oh
But in
my.
my mind, if I send out, you know, 250 letters 2 times, so I'm in for $500 plus my supplies. So let's say I'm in for $1,000. In all reality, I expect my year-end campaign to generate somewhere easily between 10 and 25,000 without even thinking. Because oftentimes it's just a reminder for these people who have already given to your organization. Oh, that's another one. Who do you send it to? Are you sending out year-end campaign stuff to unproven donors, or I tend to only send mine to people who've given before.
No, but there is a piece in our year-end plan around Giving Tuesday where we really try to cultivate new donors. But that year-end letter goes to our tried and true people who are in some cases sitting at home waiting for their letter from Jamonville so they can send the check. So that is as much an invitation as it is an ask to those people to say, hey, it's time. Help us in the year in a really good place to start next year's ministry.
Yeah. I love the idea of Giving Tuesday because Giving Tuesday is mainly online focused. It exists here in Canada as well, and I love the idea of younger alumni. If I could, maybe Giving Tuesday can be focused on. You can focus any of these on a specific thing, but in my mind, I would love to focus Giving Tuesday on $5 monthly donations from anybody who's under the age of 40. And if I got 25 of those, I would be ecstatic, right? If they signed up for monthly giving. Because monthly giving is, as we went over in the first season, in case you missed it, monthly giving is the holy grail of fundraising. Because once they give $5 a month, it's easy enough to talk them up from there over time.
So, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So who to send to, and we'll do a bit of talking about Giving Tuesday. Today's date, when we're recording this show, I just want to make sure people know the day we're recording. Today is the 12th of October, which is a day after Canadian Thanksgiving, by the way. So we've already enjoyed our turkey and harvest and pumpkin pies and all of those things.
So you eat the same things we eat, but on a totally different day. Why is that? Do you know?
Totally different day, closer to the actual end of harvest, right?
Because there you go, being all historically accurate.
I am a farm boy. I grew up on a farm, and Thanksgiving also marks the end. So that part in October also marks the end of the fall fair season. With a lot of fairs, Thanksgiving would be the end of fair season, right? We used to attend, for years, my family attended a fair every Thanksgiving, the Brigden Fair. The population of Brigden, Ontario would go from like 700 people to over the weekend, they would see over 90,000 people yeah. So the whole town, I don't know with the pandemic what's went on, but it's all good. So we'll talk about Giving Tuesday as well, because I think that can play a role in planning both of those things at the same time, but you're aiming for two different things. Do you think we need to do reminders with people, or not reminders? Because if they're just finding Fundraising at Camp, thank you. You can hit the subscribe button and listen to us every other Monday. But if they're just finding us, are there points that we need to cover or refer back to other episodes, which would mean I'd have to look up what we covered in other episodes.
I think there are some things as we go through, we've talked about fundraising letters before and their content. And I'll just say again, the PS is the most important part of the letter. It's what most people read first. So as we go through and we talk about these individual components, we may want to reference back to former episodes, but like you said, we'd have to look up what we said in former episodes. And well, that might be an advanced study for us, Joe.
Well, it might be. We also have producers and editors who can assist us in some of those things as well. So we appreciate that. Travis is normally here, so season 1, you will, if you've listened, you'll know that Travis Allison also joined us, but currently he's unable to join us today. But I think we have a good start here. We have a great list. Is there anything else we need to pay attention to before we do our next episode, Heather?
We need to talk about how you wrap your year end. You want to be really sure that you're doing thanking properly and quickly, and that you're giving your donors what they're looking for in terms of receipts for their giving for the entire year, which may include, we hope it includes, other gifts besides the year-end gift. So receipting, thanking, and then starting to plan your next full cycle.
Yep, that's great. There's also a small discussion to be had about how recently could they have given, and you can still ask for year end. Meaning that if somebody sent you a $5,000 donation in November before you sent out year end stuff, do we ask them again immediately? That seems, yeah. Okay, I was just writing that down. All right.
Okay.
So we normally end episodes with tools or fundraising things, which we did not talk about earlier in the show. Do you have something you can rhyme off to people this episode, or do we want to start that in episode 2?
Let's start that in episode 2. But if I were brand new to this, the first thing I would do is print out a blank calendar for the next few months, and then fill in the other important dates for your camp or ministry or from wherever you're listening, so that you can start planning the dates that you want to hit these marks in the next show. That would be my tool, is just a simple blank calendar that you can start to fill in.
That's awesome. And I think I will just expand on the blank calendar a bit, making sure that you're taking the opportunities for other things as well. We at Pearce Williams send out Christmas cards at the beginning of December. And there's no reason I couldn't put a buck slip in the Christmas card that talks about a small online gift. Even if those families aren't givers, I'm already paid for the postage for the card to go. I might as well use it a little bit for. And this year's Christmas card is going to be, normally we do a big staff photo, but it's just me. There's just 3 of us this year, so it'll be awkward. Oh, it'll be great. It'll be great. So that wraps episode number 1 for Fundraising at Camp, and we will see you again in a week or 2 weeks. Pay attention to the feed, and we will go from there. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everybody. Remember, if you have any questions, you can reach me at heather@jamonville.org, because there's no ville like Jamonville.
Oh, yes. And you can reach me at joe@Camp is Better. Life is good. Camp is better.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.